As an advocate of emerging and frontier markets, I'm often asked where I invest. And so when I was recently going through my portfolio, I made a list of which countries have some of the highest allocations. So rather than me just telling you where I think will be a good country, today I'm going to tell you the top 5 emerging markets that are actually in my portfolio today. And this is not to tell you that I don't invest in developed markets, but the emerging market share of my portfolio, these are the top 5 countries. Some of these you've heard of, some of these you have not. For years, I have steadily grown positions in Chinese stocks, often through Hong Kong. I know people have different opinions on Hong Kong. I happen to think that it remains a financial center. I happen to think that China will remain a significant country. It is no longer the world's #1 population country. It is an aging country. But I think there's still a lot of critical mass there that is worth investing in. And stuff got extremely cheap. So at the beginning of this year, I met with a couple investor friends of mine, and I loaded up more on stuff in China. And stuff in China started to go up. Now, China is not the ultimate emerging market. It is obviously one of the largest economies in the world now. But in terms of the value, and in terms of what people in that country earn, it is still an affordable market. And so financials, insurance, development, some resources, those have been doing better this year. Obviously, if you invested in China a couple of years ago, it's been a bumpy road. But when I saw the depths of how some of those stocks have gotten to, I mean, just incredibly low PE ratios. Obviously, you can't look at a stock with a ridiculously high dividend after it's got crushed. I mean, maybe they're going to cut that dividend. Maybe the company has problems. But I want to look at companies like the largest insurance company in the world or the largest bank in the world. I said, that's probably not going away anytime soon. And when I saw some of the deep value levels, I said, okay, I'm going to go in more on specific companies. So far, that's been working out. So another country in the portfolio that people ask about quite a bit is India. Now, the largest population country, certainly more emerging than China. And so what am I doing there? Same with financials, some telecom and IT stuff. I'm not a big believer in IT, but some kind of like basic, telecom and IT stuff. Infrastructure stuff, so like cement companies, automotive companies. I think what's interesting in my theory of multipolarity is you're going to see, #1, more domestic production and more regional production from countries like India. I've said that before, but countries like Turkey. I mean, if you go to Serbia or Montenegro or Georgia, you're going to see a lot of mid-quality imports from Turkey. If you don't want to buy the fancy thing from Italy and you don't want to buy the cheap one from China, you buy from Turkey in that part of the world. Turkey has built this manufacturing economy that may not be a global powerhouse, although we recently did live like a king in Istanbul, and we interviewed a gentleman who believes that they are really making efforts to sell Turkish products even in countries like the U.S. But I think that Turkey could be a smaller player. It's the same reason that is the U.S. dollar ever going to be overtaken by one other currency? No. But manufacturing around the world is going to be taken over by little slivers of people that compete. And I think India obviously has the biggest domestic economy, but it's also surrounded by countries that have large populations. And so you have countries nearby that have a couple 100 million people. Bangladesh, for example. You have smaller economies. You have Southeast Asia, which I think could be a market for stuff. So obviously, you have a domestic economy in India, for which financials, they're more of growth stocks, the financials in India, obviously compared to a Singapore, but even compared to a China, because they're not big yield stocks in India. India's not a big yield market from what I've seen. But they've generally performed well for growth. So I think that the domestic economy of India will grow. As with anything, there will be some bumps along the way. But I think that, interestingly enough, with some products from the West being more expensive and kind of desire to do business more regionally, I mean, look at the trend to kind of nearshoring and nearshore manufacturing. I mean, I think that a country like India, if they go all in on manufacturing stuff, there could be something interesting there. Cambodia is also in my portfolio. I've been telling you about this for years. In fact, it was one of the first frontier markets I told you about when we started Nomad Capitalist many years ago. And I invest with our friend Reed at Invest Asian. He's going to be speaking at Nomad Capitalist Live. I'm not saying that any of these investments, by the way, are for you. I'm not saying they're suitable for your portfolio. I'm not giving you investment advice. I'm just sharing where I think that the world is going. But if you want to hear about Cambodia and Southeast and South Asian real estate markets, Reed is going to be at Nomad Capitalist Live talking about them. And this guy knows more about those markets than pretty much anybody I know. And what you see in a place like Southeast Asia, where I think you're going to have a lot of potential, again, those are some of the markets that are going to be buying products from places like India and China, perhaps more so in the future. You look at Vietnam, it's very interesting. It's still a little bit harder to get in than I think Cambodia is. Thailand, I think, has become pretty expensive. Malaysia is what I've told you, it's a great lifestyle investment. I love Malaysia. I don't think something like property is the best investment there. The stock market's been relatively flat. There are some REITs and things like that if you just want yield, and there's a good tax regime on stuff like that in Malaysia. But if you want to buy property, if you want something that's growing quickly, Myanmar obviously is off the table now. Mongolia was talked about many years ago. It's not Southeast Asia, but I think there's a harder play there. I mean, Cambodia has a smaller domestic market, but every time I go to Cambodia, they have more construction, they're building more skyscrapers, there's banks coming in from other parts of Southeast Asia. It is a more accessible market and a very quickly growing part of the world, and also an area where I think they're trying to have some increased regional cooperation with ASEAN and the countries that are in that. And so I think that Cambodia will benefit from that. For me, something like property, we've invested in stuff like a hotel, having started off with little apartments, and that's done well. And the idea behind this is, hey, there will be entire city blocks that I think will just cease to exist because they're going to build a tower there. And you have the Rosewood Hotel chain coming in. So I think Cambodia is still early, not as early as when I went there in 2013, 14, 15. But Cambodia is still a big part of my portfolio. Indonesia has been a little rockier over the years, although I've done well there overall. Same playbook in Indonesia, I think a bit more financials focused. That's another country I think people don't talk about. 250 million people, one of the largest populations in the world, strategically positioned. I would like to do more there. In fact, I've talked to our team about trying to hire in Indonesia. I think it is a place that is going to move in the right direction. A quick pause to tell you that if you want to implement the stuff that you're hearing about, Nomad Capitalist has helped people get citizenships in literally dozens of different countries. Not only citizenship by investment, citizenship through their ancestry. We've helped people get set up for naturalization. There's so many different ways to get a second citizenship, and quite frankly, we recommend maybe you get a couple of them. But which one or which ones do you get? How do they work together? How does it impact the rest of your life? We ask the questions that almost no one else in the industry asks. And so if you want to get more than a passport, if you want to actually get a plan, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply and learn how our team can help you get the right second passport or second passports and understand how it actually helps you and your family for years to come. And then, I am not necessarily investing more there, but Georgia, if you just add everything up, is in the top 5 as an individual country in my portfolio. So if you add up having a home there, if you add up that we have an office there, it's one of our biggest, if not the biggest place where we have a team for Nomad Capitalist. I have gotten into some stocks there. Now they're listed in the UK, and obviously there's a new law in Georgia that I think was badly communicated. Folks in the West absolutely don't like it, and the stuff got beaten up. I'm still doing all right on my bank stocks, and I think that the future for those stocks is good. I mean, if you've got a PE ratio of 2.9 and you've got a nice dividend yield, again, not telling you what you should invest in, but I follow the Peter Lynch model to some extent. I mean, I spend time in Georgia. I am a customer of the companies that I own shares in, and I feel comfortable with them, and I see the story going forward. And what frustrates me about people, talking about investing in emerging markets is it's always about what's the future of that country with the West. I don't know that the West entirely matters. I mean, the population of the West is shrinking. There's one population model that shows that the EU loses 20% of its population in the next 50 years. You know who's not losing their population? Southeast Asia. Africa, certainly not. Central Asia. Latin America is, the population growth is slowing down. But there's a big part of the world, by the way, in the orbit of these countries. China, India, Cambodia, Indonesia, Georgia. That's kind of the area, and then down into Africa, where population is growing, middle classes are emerging, people have more discretionary incomes. And I think that you're going to see entire generations of people who, sure, maybe they want to go to Europe. Maybe they want to study in the UK. I see a few people talking about going to the US, but maybe they want to study or travel somewhere else. But when they build their home, sure, some rich guys can always want to have the Villeroy and Boch toilet. But the average person is going to say, yeah, okay, there's this new Indian brand that's pretty high quality. There's this new Turkish brand that's pretty high quality. Okay, I'll take that. The same way that you drive a South Korean car that 20 years ago people were laughing at, right? You fill up your Kia and it doubles in value. No one's saying that anymore. South Korea has done an incredible job, and I think some of these countries may not be the next South Korea, but they will develop in their own way. And so those are 5 countries that I believe in. Now, there are other countries that I have exposure to. I guess you could say Malaysia because I have a personal residence there, but still, it wouldn't make the top 5. I also think there's some areas where you might want more regional exposure. So for me, if I'm going to invest in Africa, I'm not looking to only buy stocks in Kenya, for example, or only go all in Kenya, because at this point I don't know all the best markets to invest in that region. We have not done the deep dive. It's something that I hope to do in the next year or two. And if you'd like us to take you along with us, leave a comment below, and we may do some on-location videos in those places. But those are 5 markets that I invest in. Again, I'm not telling you should go there, but I am looking at the macro trends. I am an entrepreneur who thinks the world is changing. I do some technical analysis, but I'm not the world's #1 investor. I look at where I think the world is going, and those are countries that I think, because I'm comfortable with them, I see the growth prospects, and I think that they will do well, I've chosen to invest in.